Good evening. If everyone is ready, we will call this meeting to order. Are we set? Is it green light? Does that need to be green or red? Okay, we're good. All right, my name is Brandon Rule. We will start with a roll call. Vice Chairman, Mr. Ingram. Here. Miss Ann Tucker. Here. Mr. Gaynor. Miss Sanders Jones is absent. Miss Fincher just had her baby. She's not going to be able to join us this evening. Miss King. All right. Mr. Webb is out sick, and Miss Ray. Excellent. So we do have a quorum. We will be having to vote unanimously in order for anything to pass this evening, as we have 6 commissioners with us. So our first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from our July meeting, which was on the 19th. Okay. We have a motion and a second. A motion from Ann and a second from Ray. All those in favor? Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Oh, yeah, and we have limited microphones this evening, so we'll be speaking as loudly as we can. And then if you don't hear anything, please just raise your hand or let me know, and I'll reiterate anything the commissioners say. We have some IT servicing going on this evening. So to begin, I'll give our disclaimer that the Conway Planning Commission makes recommendations to the City Council on public hearing items. The items that are reviewed on this agenda this evening will be considered by the City Council on the next meeting, which is August 24th. Items not approved by the Planning Commission may be appealed to the City Council within 30 days of the date of the Planning Commission denial, with the exception of any decisions made by the Planning Commission acting as the Board of a Zoning Adjustment. So, and before we jump in, I'm going to rearrange our agenda here a little bit. Item E, which was a request to rezone 25.45 acres along Bill Bell Lane, the item from last month, has been postponed. So that actual hearing will be next month on the 20th, but we wanted to give an opportunity if anyone did show up to speak in favor or in opposition to that request. We would be happy to go ahead and hear that. Otherwise, if you'd like to return next month, you can do so. So being that, Mr. Frank.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brandon.
Yes, sir.
We had everything in on time, and graciously the City Council, after denying us, let us come back with a unanimous vote to come back in less than a year. So we'd filed our appropriate request for zoning change, and we got everything done except the newspaper didn't run it. Well, they ran it, but they didn't run it with the notice of the hearing. It just ran the legal it was about half a page. It was a long legal. But it didn't have notice of this hearing, and it ran 2 or 3 days late. So in no way did it meet the notice requirements that we understand we have to meet. So we'd already sent our letters out, I think close to 50, and we didn't want to just snub those people and not show up. So I came just to address that one issue and tell you we'll be back at your next meeting. With it's an R1 request, and there didn't seem to be that much opposition last time to R1. So the entire acreage will be zoned R1 next time we come back. Okay, we're just going to submit and get our signs back up. We waited until after this meeting to take the old signs down. Then we'll put the new signs up, which will say exactly the same thing, except the date will be changed. So having addressed you, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Anyone else here to speak in favor or opposition of Mr. Shaw's request? Very good. Okay, well, we will see you next month. Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Now we will jump into our public hearing items this evening, the first of which is a request to annex 44.36 acres located at 21 Mill Pond Road to be zoned A1. Ms. Skeeto.
Yes, good evening. The applicant is seeking to annex the property. It's approximately 44 acres. It's south of Mill Pond Road, just west of the intersection of Wasson Road. They're requesting upon annexation to be zoned A1, and staff does concur with that requested zoning. The applicant has indicated that there are no immediate plans for development of the property. Sewer service is not available, but Conway Corp does provide water and electric at the area. The applicant has coordinated with the Arkansas GIS office and with Faulkner County. They've cleared, Faulkner County has released the property, and planning staff and all reviewing agencies recommend annexation. So I can answer any questions, or the applicant's here if you need that. Okay.
My microphone back on here. Commissioners, any questions for staff immediately? All right. Anyone else that'd like to speak in favor of this request or anything to add? If you would, sir, please state your name and address.
My name is Wynn Thompson, 880 Acadian Point Drive. I'm the owner of the property, and the main issue has been that we have been unable to get electrical service from Entergy because the line running down the road is owned by Conway Corporation. And in order to get particularly the electricity and other city services, we decided to annex into the city if allowed. I have no present plans for any change in the current status of the property.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else here to speak in favor or opposition of this request? Seeing that there is none, we will bring it back into commission for discussion. Commissioners, the floor is yours.
That's part of what their coordination with the Arkansas GIS office confirms. Yeah. Yeah.
We have a motion to approve from Ann and a second from Arthur. All those in favor? Aye as well. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Good luck. Okay, the next item on our agenda is item B, a request for conditional use permit to allow bank or savings and loan in an O2 zoning district for property located at 841 Donaghy Avenue. Ms. Skeeto.
Yes. Okay, so this property is the Linderman Dental Clinic property there. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow a bank or savings and loan in an O2, which is a quiet office zone. That use is not allowed by right, but it is allowed by conditional use. The property was rezoned to quiet office in 2017, and then developed, I guess, like I said, for use as a dental clinic, but that building also includes a portion for a tenant lease space, which the applicant has leased for a mortgage office. There's minimal increase in traffic expected with the use, and as conditioned, the use would not likely negatively impact adjacent properties. Planning staff does recommend approval with the following conditions: that no drive-through service be permitted, so it really function more like an office than a bank, as it were. And all signage shall comply with the zoning code, which is the Article 1301, the sign ordinance. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions immediately? Okay. 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 Very good. Well, in that case, then we will be unable to come to a vote with that abstention. So we will have to defer to next month for this review.
Do we need to make any action for that?
What I would,
Vote to approve
on
the push.
that matter, I would vote to continue the hearing until next month.
So I make that motion? So I will. We have a motion and a second to continue this request into next month. All those in favor? Aye, as well. Any opposed? Motion passes. We will carry this into next month. Thank you. Okay, item C now is a request to rezone the property at 640 and 680 Hogan Lane from O2 to C2. Mr. Hill.
Yes. Item 1C, as you said, is a request to rezone the property at 640 and 680 Hogan Lane from O2 Quiet Office to C2 Neighborhood Commercial. The site is roughly 2.68 acres, and the applicant has stated that they are proposing a mini storage facility, which would also require the approval of a conditional use permit, which is also on tonight's agenda. The comprehensive plan designates the property as single family. However, the intersection of Hogan Lane and Prince Street has been identified in the plan as a neighborhood commercial node, which the site is in proximity to an existing commercial pocket as well. The rezoning does appear to be appropriate. Staff notes that any future development of the site would be subject to the city's subdivision regulations and development review standards. Staff has recommended approval of the rezoning as it would allow for low-intensity commercial development in an existing mixed-use area, and the request is unlikely to negatively impact adjacent property. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Any immediate questions for Mr. Hill while he's still at the podium? Very good. We'll open the floor up to anyone that would also like to speak in favor of this request. Mr. French. Okay, well, let's get through our rezoning and then we'll jump into the CUP. Thank you, Bobby. Anyone here to speak in opposition of this rezone request? Very good. Seeing that there is none, we'll bring it back into commission for discussion. Commissioners? Any thoughts? It seems congruent to me. I mean, the neighboring come and go property is C3, and you've got quite a bit of commercial north of this property. Make a motion? All right, we have a motion from Drew and a second from Ann. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So now that we've rezoned this property to C2, we are looking at a request for a conditional use permit for mini warehouse use in a C2 zoning. Mr. Hill.
That's right. Item 1D is a request for approval of a conditional use permit to allow a mini storage facility. It was just recently zoned to C2. As noted previously, the comprehensive plan does note that the area is adjacent to a commercial node, an existing neighborhood commercial pocket in the area. The property lies in an existing mixed-use area with commercial, residential, and institutional uses in the immediate vicinity. As conditioned, the use would not likely negatively impact adjacent property, and staff has recommended approval of the conditional use permit with the conditions as noted in the report, including enhanced landscaping, as well as a condition requiring the property would go through the city's development review process. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Hill? Very good, thank you, sir. Mr. French or Mr. Burrows, do either one of you have anything to add? And
You know, I don't think he has any. They don't have any problems with the conditions that are listed there.
Very good.
And the site plan review process. I mean, we're pretty familiar with that.
Yep.
Nothing in there that would cause any problems. I don't believe.
Okay, thank you. That was the only question I had, was regarding that the owner had an understanding of all the recommendations. So, very good. Anyone to speak in opposition of this request? All right, being that there is none, commissioners, the floor is yours. Security lighting, yeah.
Yeah, I can
Mr.
speak
Gill.
on the city's standards. The applicant can elaborate on any specifics if they want to, but the city does require that all lighting be inward facing and downward shrouded. So, and with the intent being that no light would shed. Our development standards require, I think it's like a .01 foot candle count when adjacent to residential. So it's very low lighting. But yeah, the applicant can elaborate if they'd like.
Yeah, and as for part of the development review process, they'll be required to submit a photometric plan of the site. And so that entails those foot candles that he's speaking of, the amount of light level that will be proposed for the site, which will be reviewed by Conway Corp. And then those comments will be added to the development review comments. This is part of that process. So, yes, that's a great question.
Other thing, I'll add as a note, that item 10 that talks about full cutoff shielded lighting, that additionally means that IESNA standard would mean that the lighting is dark sky compliant as well.
More mini storage. People have too much stuff. All right, we have a motion from Ann with the 12 staff recommendations and a second from Ray. All those in favor of this request for conditional use permit for mini storage warehouse in C2? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck with your development. Now moving into our last public hearing item this evening, we have a consideration to amend the Conway zoning code concerning the regulation of short-term rentals for transient occupation. And Director Mr. James Walden is going to walk us through this item.
Yes, so I'm bringing this to you. We had some neighborhood complaints, a group of citizens that approached the mayor's office about regulating short-term rentals. And so as a result of that, staff has drafted some regulations for that. The approach with this is more along the lines of registration and notification of notification and licensure of these. There's sort of I think some competing camps of how to approach short-term rental regulations. Some are about sort of zoning them out of certain areas, and then others are more about registration and taxation. This falls much more in that registration and taxation vein. So with these regulations, and currently there are no regulations on short-term rentals, so it's essentially what you would consider they can pretty much go anywhere in any type of structure. And when I talk about, back up, when I talk about short-term rental, what I'm talking about are VRBO and Airbnb. So if you all have ever stayed at one of those, then that is a sort of classic short-term rental. It's something 5 years ago when I talked about these, nobody knew what I was talking about. And today you hear it quite a bit. So with the regulations, the number one thing would be a license requirement. They would be required to apply for a license from the city clerk's office. They would have to provide applicant information. They would be required to carry insurance for a short-term rental with a general liability policy of at least $1 million in coverage. They would be required to designate a local property representative, so somebody that would be available to respond to complaints 24/7 within essentially an hour, and then also would be empowered to take remedial action on any of those complaints. So, for instance, if the people that are in the short-term rental are throwing a gigantic party, then they can tell them, nope, you got to send a whole bunch of people home or something along those lines to address that. That local property representative would be on file with the police department. So if there were something that did get called out there, that the police would have that information as well. There would be an annual fee of $100 for this. So it'd be an annual license that they would have to renew every year. And they would have to show proof of their A&P tax permit. So the hospitality tax that goes with hotels. License renewal, that would be required by January 31st of each year. And then you get a late fee if you submit after March 1st. And then if it's submitted after April 1st, then it turns into a 30% fee, so that'd go up to $130. If there is no application that is made by May 1st, then the license will be deemed revoked. And they're required to provide any updated information. So, for instance, if their local property representative changes, then they're required to report that information to the city clerk's office as soon as that information changes. There is in here a process for revocation of that. So basically, the city clerk, by mailing of a certificate of mailing, a short-term license can be revoked. One, if they provide false material within their application. If there's a change that occurs in any material fact upon which the short-term rental license was issued that hasn't been reported to the city of a change within 30 days, that would be cause. And then I think probably one of the two last big one, the short-term rental has been cited of a violation of any provision of law or otherwise fails to meet sanitation standards, the fire prevention code, any code that applies for transient occupation, accommodation. And then also if the local property representative fails to respond in a timely manner to two or more complaints within a 12-month period. Those are all things that could cause revocation of that permit. So essentially, it's meant to be directed towards someone that is operating this as a bad actor, in essence. They do have an option to appeal that revocation. Essentially, they would have to go within 30 days of that issuance. Then they would appeal that to the city council, and there would be a hearing on it, essentially to determine whether or not that they should be reinstated. And then finally, with that, there's requirements for information packet. The information packet, which is pretty standard information that you see in a lot of cities where Airbnb and VRBO is required to operate. How many, the maximum occupancy of the units, which would be determined through an inspection with the fire department. Any applicable noise and use restrictions, where they're supposed to park, where they're not supposed to park, how they deal with trash in that, any evacuation routes, contact for their local property representative. So if they have an issue, somebody that they can contact as well. And then their responsibility to not trespass on private property or create disturbances. And then notification that if they don't go along with what those rules are, then that they can be cited. So the use, short-term rentals could occur in a legally permitted and zoned single-family dwelling. All other transient use or short-term rentals would meet applicable standards for a bed and breakfast, hotel, or motel. And essentially what a short-term rental would be is one rental of not more than one entire dwelling with no more than 5 sleeping rooms to what would be considered one family, or not more than 8 persons. and that would be not more than 8 persons not related by blood, marriage, or some form of custodial relationship or guardianship. And then this additionally changes the definition of what a bed and breakfast is to up the number of rooms that would be allowed in a bed and breakfast. Bed and breakfasts are largely handled by a conditional use permit. So, are there any questions with this or thoughts?
Yeah, it looks like the floor is empty. So my first question, the complaints or discussions that brought this about, whom are those types of people that, is this transient people that are complaining about the regulations, or these are property owners that are,
It's property
wanting more
owners within
structure?
a neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah, where there is a Airbnb where
Got it.
they're complaining about things like parties or underage drinking.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I've heard of it. I hadn't been in Conway, but I've heard of it. And then my second question, so these regulations, I'm sure, are comparable to other jurisdictions, other cities, kind of where we've sourced these thresholds.
Our approach with this, yeah. So we looked at what Hot Springs has put together
Yeah.
and kind of looked at what the issues are that are challenging Conway right now. We did not go as far as Hot Springs in these regulations or what some other communities are doing.
Okay.
Kind of wanted to go in, take sort of a minimal approach to regulating this and see if that corrects the issues that we have, because it's not nearly as I would say I don't know that we've gotten the level of complaints that you see within some other communities.
Mhm.
So this is very much a light touch form of regulation. If that doesn't correct what the issues are, we continue to have those ongoing in places, then it's certainly something that we can reevaluate. Or if there are things about the regulations that go too far, that are unworkable, again, we can come back and take another crack at it and look at it.
Okay. Well, for a general liability policy, that's a kind of a basic threshold.
Not necessarily for the rental property.
Right.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of the baseline.
I've been out of commercial insurance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The cost? Yeah.
It's not that much.
Yeah.
That would cover accidents,
It's commercial general liability, so anything that, yeah, incidents, fires, of course, the property insurance would also cover those sorts of things, but it's more about the commercial arrangement, the exchange of money and property.
Mm-hmm.
the whole house. Yeah, short-term rentals is the whole house. A lot of people will rent just a room for short-term. A room in their home. Well, this says, no more than one entire dwelling. Could be less.
Yeah.
So if you rent out a room to somebody, you gotta be.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's for more than 30 days, you don't.
That's right.
Correct. At that point, it's no longer a transient accommodation, so it's a.
The only time that I've ever seen that happen, like just rent a small, like set-aside room or mother-in-law quarters or something like that, is usually at the beach.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't happen around here, I don't think that much.
Well, sometimes in college kids might rent a room
But
or
it's
an
gonna be
apartment or
hard
something.
enough,
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. It's gonna be for a semester.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so it would disqualify.
Right.
I think we're saying it doesn't happen often, but it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Are we unduly burdening those instances where it does happen for a couple of weeks, or
Right.
I'm renting a room over Christmas break because I don't want to go home and I can't stay on campus type deal? Are we unduly burdening those type of situations where it is short term and probably would fall under this, but it's not under the spirit of what this is intended to correct?
Right.
There are companies out there that research essentially the property listings, and they have a listing of all the property listings that are within the community.
If I, plan commission and I wanted to rent a room out to college students that can't go back home overseas somewhere, how would I know that I need to do all this?
So again, if you're doing it through a platform like Airbnb or VRBO, so these regulations will be provided to them, and then additionally, we will be contacting. If this were passed, we'd be contacting all of those property owners to let them know that they would need to be registered.
So it'll be just those that have publicly made it available, but otherwise, ordinary citizen won't know this and will be operating.
I think the vast majority of anybody that happens to be operating an Airbnb or a VRBO or short-term rental, that they will be going through a platform that handles the booking for them.
Yeah, like if you put it in the newspaper or something, and advertise you got a room to rent, you might not know. Have to do a little job of educating, yeah. Mhm.
I think that's a very, very, very small, minute, realm of possibility. First, the city, the means of which we would know is that we would go to a company like Granicus. They would supply us a list of all the Airbnbs and VRBOs in the city, and that's how we would have a registration list. And so we're really only going to know about those that are truly commercial. So in that instance where you're talking about an individual that is providing an opportunity to people that they know, the only way that we would become aware of that, I would say, would frankly be if there's people make complaints that there's some type of thing going on there that either they're throwing parties, or that's essentially about the only way that the city would know in that instance.
Mhm.
Okay, so, are you going to search the database and send this out to people that are listed on?
If this is passed, then we'll probably purchase that data that essentially gives us information on where short-term rentals are in the city. So.
I have a question on B3 on the inspection.
Mhm.
You thought of an inspection happening every number of years?
It would essentially be every year. So with their license renewal, that they would need to have inspection each year.
So is that
That's good.
like all of the inspection, the HVAC, the electrical, everything?
It would have to be inspected in compliance with the Arkansas Fire Prevention Code, in particular with the provisions that are for transient accommodation. So, but when you're thinking about things like, do they have what GFCI compliant outlets? Yes, those would be things that they would look at.
And so if the code changes from year to year, they have to keep updating?
That's right. Yeah. Because in a sense, you're creating a commercial environment that you're renting that property out to someone, so you're liable for all those things.
And it becomes
That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's
I'll
right.
be honest, and I am the last person in the world that wants to go out and regulate short-term rentals. I Well, I mean, the reason I say that is I had a very, very bad experience with writing regulations in another community, and I did not want to touch it. But I think it has become enough of an issue that there is desire to address it at some level, and this is about as lenient of regulations as one could get.
Yeah. 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 It's a lot. Yeah. Ball games. Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was enough that I was asked to write regulations about it. So
I don't either. I think this is a good measure for the city and for public safety, health and welfare. Um, I think it's a good measure.
it would be the city clerk's office. So it's because it falls kind of under that realm of being like a business permit.
Mm-hmm. Make a motion. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so the options are pass it on to the city council for their consideration, which they'll need to look at it, or you can vote to continue the hearing until next month. Or turn it down. So this is a zoning use, and so that's why it's would go into the zoning code. Short-term rental is a specific zoning use. It's a just like a single family would be a use that could go into certain types of zones. Yeah, it's a basically based on its use, it would occur in a legally permitted and zoned single family dwelling. So wherever that single family dwelling is, whether it's in R1, R2, R2A, C1, you know, TJ, as long as it is a legally zoned and legally permitted single family dwelling, one could operate a short-term rental in it, which is very different than what a lot of the approach that a lot of other cities have taken with regulation, where they require a conditional use permit. So
Mm-hmm.
essentially, anytime that somebody wants to establish one, they have to come to the planning commission, and you get to have a public hearing about it. That's essentially the approach of a lot of other cities have taken.
Which may be an approach to get those unknown mom and pops to adhere to the rules and regulations if they're not using the platform. But I agree, that's kind of a burden to have to do a conditional use permit for every short-term rental.
Yeah, and the intent of these regulations is to address the issues that have been raised. It's not necessarily to go out and be punitive or shut anything down. It's simply, let's have a registration of these. Let's lay down some ground rules in terms of making sure that we don't have wild, crazy parties going on, and that it's operated in a way that's being a good neighbor.
Have a motion from Ann and a second from Drew. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, now into our other business, we have some bylaws, some amendments to our planning commission bylaws. Mr. Walton.
Yeah, y'all get a double dose here. So we all had a very interesting meeting last month, and so felt like it would be a good opportunity to take a look at the bylaws, revisit those. This is an item that is just being laid on your desk at this meeting, and then can be taken up for consideration at the next meeting. So whatever input that you'd like to provide, I'll go through a presentation, and then if y'all see things you're like, oh, we probably need to change that or change this. But I'll go through and go through the primary changes that are in this. Within Article 2, it talks about members, or I'm sorry, in Article 2, Item B, Paragraph B, the main change there is it had chairman, vice chairman, and secretary, changing the names of those offices to chair, vice chair, just to be gender neutral. Then additionally, laying out that the election for those offices would occur in November. With fingers crossed, we get to cancel our December meetings. So that's one of the reasons why we would put it in November is in case the December meeting is canceled. And then the terms of those offices would run from January to December. So that is consistent with what practice has been, but it's also to ensure that those that are elected to offices are among the veteran members, and won't be, someone doesn't automatically come on as a new commissioner and then get voted into one of those offices. The second is Article 3 committees. It basically did away with all of the standing committees. I don't know of when those standing committees have been used, such as zoning, annexation, subdivision. Now that we have taken all of the subdivision items to Planning Commission, there's really not a necessity for them. And so, and I think in part, it's part of the efficiency of the way that we operate. I think, particularly with subdivisions, there's a lot of things that we're not getting as many subdivisions as we got in the 90s when that committee was necessary. But in addition, we're working to make sure that we get almost all of those issues addressed before they come to you all. And so that too is about being efficient with our meeting time. There are advisory committees and special committees. So if there is sort of a topic that you all would want to undertake and say, we need to look at, this issue, then you can form a committee to do that. And that's really what those are existing for. Under Article 4 with meetings on Freedom of Information Act, basically just said that all meetings would be open to the public and subject to audio or video recording, again, and saying that those records would be kept in perpetuity. That's just consistent with what state law is now, that there's a requirement that everything be recorded by audio and kept. Article 5 reworked the order of business slightly, just to add some things. If there are committee reports, again, that's something that would be very rare, but committee reports and then announcements and other business that can be held at the end of that. Now we start getting into some of the big changes on B, the order of the hearing. So these are sort of the procedures for public hearings, and this would be a significantly big change. So I know we had a very long public hearing last time, and so we sometimes have time limits. What I have been told by legal counsel in the past is if we have time limits, then we need to consistently enforce them. So we have bought a clock that we can set back there on the desk and basically set times. The way this would be, public hearings would be held is our chair would announce the item. We would have a presentation of the staff report. The applicant would be provided time to do their presentation. That would be limited to 10 minutes. If there were a organized group that wanted to bring forth a presentation, they would also be afforded 10 minutes to provide their presentation as a counter to the applicant's presentation. And then public comment. And public comment would be just whomever wants to get up. They would be limited to 3 minutes. So basically have a countdown on each of those. Then the hearing would be closed by the chair at appropriate time, whenever that is, typically when you exhaust the number of people that are wanting to speak. There would be general discussion and questions by the planning commissioners. At that time, the commissioners can ask questions of staff, or if they want the applicant to clarify things, if there are questions that have been raised by the public. There is not a formal rebuttal by the applicant. It's just if the commissioners want clarification on items. And then after that, commission action. So that's sort of a big change there. That would be the way that we would conduct it every single time. So every time we would have our timer out there, our little clock, and we probably wouldn't set it to the really annoying alarm that is on there, but that can be silenced.
So if we're doing that consistently, does the chair need to make the announcement every time that there is going to be a time limit and these are the thresholds for those times? You know, because I'll do that when the room is full, and I know we might have some contention, but I won't say that if there's 2 or 3 people in the audience, you know, because we know that it's unnecessary.
So that gets to the next paragraph, conduct of hearings. Basically, when we have at the beginning of the meeting, what we'll do is kind of lay the rules up there for public hearings. That way, if you don't want to read the entirety of this, but the rules are, you know, basically that thing that you say at the beginning of every meeting, and then the additional rules with no person address the planning commission without first being recognized by the chair. All questions and remarks will be made from the podium and addressed through the chair. After being recognized, you know, state your name and address for the record. If a group of citizens is present to speak about an item, a spokesperson shall be selected by the group to address the planning commission. That way, that's one thing that gets really tiresome in a hearing is if you've got a whole neighborhood that shows up and they all have, where I've had to read the same form letter over and over again. That gets redundant. All remarks would be addressed to the planning commission as a whole and not to any member. Sometimes you get that where someone will say, "Oh, Drew, you know, we had that. So good to see you. We had a really good time at the country club the other night." We don't want people to put y'all in that position. In essence. No person other than members of the planning commission and the person having the floor shall be permitted to enter into any discussion, either directly or through a member of the planning commission without permission of the chair. So basically, somebody can't be sitting down and yell out a comment and then somebody else retort to it. And then once the public hearing is closed, no person in the audience can speak at that point. No more speech unless the planning commission as a whole or by majority vote opens that up. I will add that those rules for the time limits that I'll add that in here as well.
Great.
That is why I said shall read or cause to be visually displayed. So that's something that we can put up as sort of a hold screen at the beginning. D, the other change is changing from Robert's Rules of Order to the procedure rules for municipal officials. This is a handbook that's published by the Arkansas Municipal League. It is very similar to the Robert's Rules of Order, except that it's a little bit more generic. Sort of the Municipal League always tells folks the point of having procedures or rules of procedure is to make sure that you have a smooth meeting. The point is not to adhere to the God of procedure. And I don't know if you all have been in one of those meetings before. I've been in one of those meetings where someone follows everything, point of personal privilege, that can get old really quickly for the planning commission. It also gets really old for everybody in the audience as well. So other big changes here, rules of procedure. One thing is added on number 2, any member of the commission who may have a conflict of interest in any property or decision relating to such property, which shall be the subject matter of or affected by a decision of the commission, shall recuse him or herself from participating in the public discussion or any votes on the matter. So again, that is, and again, conflict of interest that would be defined to a certain extent by the individual. I think a great example would be financial in that, but that is left somewhat generic, as there are varying degrees, and there are times where I've worked in some small towns, and if you wanted to identify who had a conflict of interest, it was everybody on the planning commission, because they all knew each other, or they all went to church together. So it gets to be a little hairy. It is a very much a gray area where you draw that line. The other thing is on item 3. Items can be presented by oral motion, so move to approve. Big change here is basically votes can be conducted by voice vote. If it is not a unanimous vote, then that automatically triggers a roll call at that point. So, hopefully when we're rolling through things, we can just do a voice vote. If there's no opposition, no abstention, boom, it just passes unanimously. But if it isn't, then we go to a roll call at that point. And that basically allows a record of everyone's votes in an accurate manner. So the other, on item 4, a simple majority of those present at an official meeting shall be sufficient to approve any item unless otherwise specified by city ordinance. So if you have quorum of 6, it requires 4 yes votes. That would be the change there. And part of that is the idea is essentially just about everything that y'all vote on can be either heard by the city council or overturned by the city council. So other big thing in here, if you go to F, number 6, amendment of an application. So an applicant can be allowed to amend an application at the discretion of the chair. It can only be done for a rezoning in that instance. And that request can only be made prior to the closure of the public hearing. So if they verbally amend that request after the public hearing has been closed, that is not allowed. They basically have to make it before the closure of the public hearing. And the idea behind that is that y'all will automatically continue the public hearing to the next month. So the idea is, while the public hearing is open, that means the public is here to speak. Anybody that has an interest is present. If it's amended, then you're automatically required to continue the hearing to the next month. That way, everybody knows, everybody's voice can be heard in that situation if something happens. Yep. Once the public hearing's closed, they cannot amend it. Yep.
One question I had on 5C, 2 and 3, and maybe I'm just reading this wrong. It seemed like there was some conflict in the wording of that. It kind of goes along the lines of that, what we're talking about. No applicant shall be allowed to withdraw an application within 5 working days of or during the public hearing. And then 3 states that the applicant may withdraw the application after the public hearing, but prior to commission action. So clarify that we're talking about after I've closed the public hearing, but before we've taken action, they can withdraw the request. But then the one before it says that they can't.
I think what that is meaning is that it has to go through the public hearing. They can't withdraw it.
Okay. But they are allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
The idea there, I think, I mean, that's a holdover from previous draft. I think the idea there is that they can withdraw it and then resubmit without having to wait 12 months.
Yeah, okay,
So,
okay.
under number 7, applicant attendance at the meeting. If an applicant does not show up to the meeting, then this basically requires y'all to table the item. So
Really?
can't be heard
Okay.
if they're not here. So
That's fair.
if it's not important enough for them to be here, then it's not important enough for y'all to
Yeah.
sit through. and
Yeah, I
discuss.
like it. Mm-hmm. Month before last, yeah.
So, if they are not physically present at the meeting. Yeah. Now, if it's virtual, if they're not on the
Right.
virtual thing, but yeah.
When they make application, they'll be told that.
Yeah. And essentially what that means is they either need to be here or they need to have a representative here on their behalf.
Yeah.
But I mean, and from my perspective, the reason I add that is the decisions that you all make have a big impact on not only the property owner, but everyone that's adjacent to it.
Mhm.
And I think there is a certain level of seriousness to these decisions. And I think if an applicant does not take it seriously enough to show up to the meeting, then that sends a message that they are not really serious about whatever project that they're doing. And so if they're really committed to doing it, they really want it to happen, then they need to make themselves available at the meeting or send a representative for them. So,
So we just look over this and think about it and we'll take action.
yeah, and if you've got comments, you can email those to me. I'll add that about the rules, about the procedure there. But if there's anything you say, oh, that looks horrible, or maybe do we need to address this, we can go through it. So.
I like it. I wish we'd have done this a couple years ago.
When we are making zoning decisions, are we acting as the board of zoning adjustment?
No, when you're reviewing things under the zoning code, so for instance, a rezoning or anything like that, you're acting as the planning commission. The only time at which you are acting as the board of zoning adjustment is if you are hearing an appeal of what I say, Levi says, Lauren says, Beth says, or if there's a variance application. So if someone says, the requirement is a 15-foot setback, and they say we want a 14-foot setback instead of a 15-foot setback, then that is when you're sitting as the board of zoning adjustment. All other times, you are acting as the planning commission.
I just want to be clear on that because it says if we make a decision as in acting as a board of zoning adjustment, it can't be repealed to the city council.
Yes, and the reason being is that is consistent with state law. Essentially, those decisions are what attorneys would call quasi-judicial. So essentially, people are entering evidence. You're weighing whether what they're saying is valid, whether relief should be granted in that situation. And so because that is inherently intended to be a non-political decision, the way that state law has structured that, they're set up to be decisions that are then go straight to court if someone wants to appeal that. Correct.
Probably what I said. Right, but I'm saying, outside of that, when we're just doing zoning requests, we're not acting as the board of zoning adjustment, we're just acting as commissioners. But if it's a variance or setback,
If it's a variance or if it's an appeal of the administrative official decision. So, for instance, if I say the color black is green, and the applicant says no, the color black is orange, then and they say James is absolutely wrong about that. Then they come to you and y'all determine what the color black is. Is the color black orange or is the color black green? Or is the color black?
Would this be like when Chris came, when,
The
got insurance
parking in the front
Yes.
on Prince Street. Yeah, Princeton College. That one.
It is similar to that. It's a little bit more nuanced because there are sections in the zoning code, like with development review, where it provides an appeal procedure that is separate from what that section is, where you're acting as the Board of Zoning Adjustment. So the back to Board of Zoning Adjustment is if we're making a determination that says that the code says this and someone disagrees
Mhm.
and they say, no, the code says this. Y'all are sort of the arbiters of what the code says in that instance.
Well, there is typically an announcement, correct? Don't you tell us? Didn't you tell us?
Yeah, it's in the title. Yeah, and I try to make it, try to raise the flag. Yeah.
Yep. Beth puts together these wonderful staff reports, and we try to provide y'all as much information as possible. So,
Before we adjourn, I have a question. So Brian Townsend is dead, right?
correct.
Can we appoint somebody to serve out the rest of this term?
We will have to do that, yes.
How much longer does he have?
I think he's got a couple of years.
Have we made any attempt to reach out to any of the applicants in this last round?
I have been communicating with the mayor's office, and so I'll follow up with them
Okay.
about that.
Do we need to do anything? We had some great applicants in the last round, and I feel like any of them would be great.
We've had some great applicants over the last 3 years.
Mhm. And we keep urging those that didn't get selected to come back and apply again, so it's a good instance.
You know that lady that was gonna serve as the substitute, not last year, but the year before,
I can't remember. I have to go back to my notes.
the one that stands out to me is the Jones girl that ran family's business. That was a couple of years ago. That might have been.
I think that might be the same person, yeah.
Oh, she's good.
Mhm.
I think the thing that I would say to that is, I don't like to say that the planning commission is a recommending body, but when you are talking about rezonings, when you're talking about subdivisions, when you're talking about site plan review or site plan appeals, all of those votes that you all take can be appealed to the city council, and so me personally, I would tend to err on that side of let's get a recommendation that goes forward that reflects sort of some type of action from the planning commission, rather than if we had that rezoning last month and there was a realization that it's going to fail, and they said, will you please table it? Well, we would probably be right back in the same position this month because there's only 6 members here. And who knows how many members there will be next month. And so I think from a standpoint of taking care of the business and moving things forward for the applicants in a timely manner, that would be what my recommendation would be, is to have it as a majority vote. Again, understanding and knowing that those items still have to be heard in the majority of times by the city council as well.
Some of the really contentious stuff we've had, like neighborhood market, Kroger, all of that, and I mean, this room couldn't have held all those people, and a 4-2 vote would not have gone over well. And it passed at 4-2, it would not have gone over well. only come along few and far between. I mean, I can say it because I've been here a long time, but on something like that, a 4-2 vote would be awful.
But you had everybody, I mean, the public took out their time to come and have their say and listen. I think you make a decision, you heard everybody, they come and
Well,
voice their
yes, and I'm not
opinion.
arguing making a decision right then. I'm just saying it wouldn't go over well.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't, but
They're,
they
they're gonna go in front of, city
Yeah.
council and be like, Frank, you know, I got twice as many votes as I did. That was what he kept saying over the whole thing. And it was 4-2. But yes,
Yeah.
he was right. I got twice as many votes as I did. If he said it once, he said it 3 or 4 times. And it just, it makes it sound like, you know, there just wasn't enough people here. We just need to make sure that all of our commissioners are showing up.
So you want to require a 6 vote? A 6?
I think
On most stuff, no, right, to tell you the truth, on most stuff, no. I'm just saying, on those big ones, I'm afraid it's.
Well, and then the question is, okay, so the level of importance.
Yeah, we've got to
No,
write the
it's gotta
law.
be the same either way. I agree with that. I'm trying to think.
Yeah,
But
and
it's-
I agree with both sides, it's
And
just a
with
matter.
4-2, we're gonna send it to the council for approval and they'll have to figure it out.
So from an applicant point of view, that's where I think James is saying, move it along rather than delay the application
Right.
30 days at a bare minimum, right?
Mhm.
And that's
I
where,
mean,
if we become a commission of delay, that's even worse.
Yes.
See what I'm saying?
And-
Yeah, we want to be the planning commission, not the tabling commission.
And it's, you're
In
right.
this culture of cancel.
I've worked for a community that was the tabling commission. That was, it routinely took 60 days to get anything through.
No doubt about that. I do not like to, and I don't like to send stuff to the council without a recommendation. I equally don't like to do that.
I think the,
Not pointless,
Yeah.
right?
I'll say this, one thing that is a beauty of the majority vote is that if everybody's here, then that issue of how many votes is necessary is moot. It where it becomes into play is if there are people are not here, and that can, you know, in that situation of it not being a majority vote can lead to a situation of a no by absence, in essence.
Well, Laura, what do you think? How many, if the number's not 4, what do you think it should be? Mhm. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Yep.
So, question, how many times have we had 11, are we 10 or 11 people? How many?
It's 10.
Yeah.
How many times have we had all the members here?
Well, everyone wrote, it almost right up, so it was a buck.
It has been a lot.
Yeah.
Since we started coming back here.
Well, and COVID,
Yeah.
COVID has played a huge part in it.
Yeah.
It's gotten out of
Twice
hand.
this year or twice in the past 12 months? Out of 8 months, our 8 meetings, twice we've had people here. So it would have been
So
6
that's-
meetings, we wouldn't have been doing anything.
Right, and before, we would have more. I mean, when we were ready in person before pandemic, we didn't never
Yeah.
have this people.
Yeah.
We had 10.
Yeah, I would say this is the first time it's been this few in my 5 years.
I mean, we held those people to their time, because I've been secretary 2 or 3 times.
Mhm.
I know Letitia's, I think Letitia did it once.
No,
And we did, we used to hold them to that time, but we kind of let everything.
Valencia, yeah, thank you. I was digging too.
like crossing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know she used to have her phone out.
Mhm.
So I think we just need to tighten back up and get back, you know, doing things like we used to.
Well, just sticking to what we have said we're going to do.
until we
we're
found a
we're down
replacement.
one, period, right?
Yeah.
We're down two for the next
Yep.
60, 90 days, so we're
Yep.
down to 8 people max until Rebecca comes back, and then you get her, Brown's replacement name.
Mhm.
And so you're already at 8, so I think putting it to 6 before we have an actual full prison commission is probably gonna bite us for it. Now, maybe when I'm gone next year, if you revisit it, I don't know.
It's been 6.
Well, yeah, if you look in his notes, we haven't amended the bylaws in 20 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's been 6 for as long as I've been here.
Mhm.
So are we asking the public to come back again, so the people that were absent can hear that hearing?
Yeah, you have to.
But like in the case of last week, them too, or
He
you still
changed-
don't get it all?
He changed
His request.
His request after the public hearing. So that was my whole issue. Now we haven't heard public hearing on the actual request.
Mhm.
So yeah, they had to come back. Yeah, so then you
Because-
gotta tell people, you gotta come back. So, and then we could. Well, I mean, that was for them, so that they could be heard on the request that Frank made. Because all that we had heard so far was on his old request, on the MF1, whatever it was. And then after public hearing was all over with, he said, no, never mind, we'll make it R2. That was all planned. Well. Love him to death.
Strategist. Well,
So they were gonna have to come back regardless, if they wanted to be heard. As long as we make that clear. If we have to do that, maybe we won't have to.
so we've got a month to chew on this.
Correct.
What
Yeah.
will, just for us to be prepared ahead of time, what, will conversations look like? What do we need to do next month in regards to these?
Review it and provide any comments that you might have.
Okay, so no vote coming in the next, do we vote on this?
It would be, yeah, so in the interim, to the next meeting, provide comments, so I can provide an updated draft, and then the idea is to vote on it, at the next meeting.
What's funny is that we have 3 people not here, I'll have the same questions next on the time to vote. It's gonna be even more disadvantage than I cannot hear.
Well, they did receive their packets, and I know that they read them.
That's right.
I'm sure they did.
Compare these bylaws to the ones you had on now, you'll know the changes.
Here's the cliff notes. You got to go and do your own research.
That's because you'd have to compare it to see what
You
changes.
can watch the video.
Yes, that's what they need to do,
Yeah.
is watch, is it on Facebook still?
Yeah.
Is that part on Facebook?
And YouTube.
And was
Yep.
the bylaws part on YouTube, on LinkedIn?
Yeah, we're live right now.
Talking about right now, it's on there.
I'm sure it-
I was looking for the green light.
Who's on camera? Oh.
There's no further
If
discussion.
there's no further discussion, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor? So moved.
Is there people to vote